Good evening. Tonight we watched The Mummy's Tomb, the third from the Mummy series, and I'll get to that because, as usual, we're going to go over the other things we watched. Not a lot. Um, we started with a couple of episodes of Sabrina the Teenage Witch because we were cooking and we needed something short to play on the computer, and we take the computer into the kitchen while we cook. And Sabrina the Teenage Witch is a favorite for that. We've watched many of the episodes. I think we still have 70 to go, in the neighborhood of 70 episodes that we haven't watched of Sabrina, but we like it, and it's great fun. The only other movie that we watched was what was it? Oh, it was a movie called From Hell. It's about Jack the Ripper, which is one of history's most mysterious monsters. And it stars Heather Graham, Johnny Depp, Robbie Coltrane, and Ian Holm. It's an interesting one. If you liked, for instance, Sleepy Hollow, which we watched the other night, it's kind of that, but it's more realistic drama, but it's still horror monster movie type thing. It's like any Jack the Ripper story movie, like any Jack the Ripper movie. It's not exactly history because we don't. It still remains a mystery, but it's an interesting take. And the Elephant Man makes an appearance, which is always great. And We watched a couple of creepy music videos, including Will Smith's and Jazzy Jeff's "Nightmare on My Street." Um, but the main event was The Mummy's Tomb, which continues the story of the Banning family, and it picks it up 30 years later. It's the only one of these so far. A lot of them refer to the events of the past movies, and say, like in Frankenstein, say your father or your grandfather or whatever relation created this monster, and it's your responsibility, and it'll flash back where relevant. But this movie starts with a 10-minute uh, Stephen Banning saying, "Yes, this is what happened in the last movie." He's saying, "This is what happened 30 years ago. This is my story of being a great archaeologist and discovering a mummy," and he's telling the story, and it's got long segments of the mummy's hand. So that was disappointing because if the movie is only an hour long or a little more than an hour long, 10 minutes is a big portion to devote to here's the movie you've already seen. Um, but it goes into the primary action of this movie, which is that the mummy, not this mummy, not Karloff, but the mummy Caris is brought by his new caretaker to wherever, I think London, but wherever Stephen Banning and his family is, the mummy is brought over to seek revenge on the entire family, and he has a new caretaker, and we find out that the events of the mummy's hand had no actual consequences because the mummy was destroyed, if in the sense that monsters are ever destroyed in these movies, and the caretaker was shot. But it turns out that the caretaker was actually shot just in the arm and is therefore fine, and the mummy didn't actually burn. So good for them. They survived, and then they went on this new crusade. Um, it is what it is. Lon Chaney plays the mummy in this. Lon Chaney Jr., I should say, plays the mummy in this. Dick Foran and Wallace Ford return. John Hubbard, I think, also from their roles in. I don't know if John Hubbard was in, but Wallace Ford and Dick Foran were the leads in the Mummy's Hand, and therefore they are the intended victims of the Mummy's Tomb. Um, this actually doesn't take place much in the actual mummy's tomb because, again, they bring the mummy to some European or American city. I don't know, but I clearly don't care as much about this series as I do others. But also, I said that before. I'm not as into the Mummy history, Egyptian history. I've read Frankenstein and Dracula and The Invisible Man. I'm steeped in those. Um, but mummies, it just I've got work to do on the Mummy. Um, but Lon Chaney Jr. is the mummy in the Mummy's tomb, which at this point means he's played the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, and the Mummy. I didn't. I knew that he played the Wolfman, and I knew he played Frankenstein's monster. I didn't know he also played the Mummy, and that makes me wonder if he's going to show up as the Invisible Man, or any of the other monsters at this point. But good for him. Now he is officially a man of three faces. Still got 997 to go to compete with his legendary father. By the end of this is another one kind of like The Invisible Man Returns, where the authorities, like the outside world, it's not just monster chases individuals, it's the outside world gets involved, and they say we've got a monster on the loose, and we need to actually plan our strategize on how to defeat this monster. And but what it ends up being is an angry mob with torches chasing the mummy to a house, and then waving fire at it to make it go away because it doesn't like fire, and then burning the house with the mummy in it, and it's Frankenstein. It becomes Frankenstein. Now, somewhat appropriate since Karloff was the original mummy and the original Frankenstein's monster, but not exactly. I mean, it's funny to think that toward the end of a movie, but it's not particularly fun as far as respecting the movie. What was I going to say? Oh, something I meant to say yesterday about Invisible Agent, or inspired by the Invisible Agent, which is just Invisible Agent, not the Invisible Agent, title-wise, is in the same way that the Mummy and Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman. I think Jack Pierce did the makeup design for all of them. I might be wrong on that, but those characters, those monsters, great blank page, blank canvas for the artistry of makeup. Invisible Man, obviously not, but a great way of special effects people going, how are we going to do this, and coming up with solutions to the problem of making him invisible. So all of these movies, possible exception of Dracula, because Dracula looks just like a person, except there's the eyes thing where they shined a flashlight in Bela Lugosi's eyes. But just the no offense to your regular dramas, but there is artistry to the makeup and set design if in a realistic world, a realistic movie telling a realistic story. But it's, to me at least, it's not as interesting as far as developing and pushing the form and pushing the craft, stagecraft, makeup, the things that make things look different. And this and Frankenstein also kind of made me, or more recent Frankenstein movies where the monster is essentially kind of Igor's pet. And in this, the mummy is not so much on its own mission, but at the beck and call of its new caretaker. They're starting to remind me of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and The Somnambulist. That's something to watch. It's a silent movie. It's apparently very influential. I think I've gone on long enough about this. I got three more of these, and I don't know who's the mummy in the rest of them, but I'll find out. I don't recall the name of the person who played the mummy in The Mummy's Hand. It wasn't Boris Karloff or Lon Chaney Jr. But anyway, it's interesting. It's just not my favorite, except the first one I really liked. I'm just not as interested, but I can get more interested, and I feel like I should and will. Have a lovely midnight.